Let's talk about water stewardship just on a high level. Maybe, Ryan, start with you. Is just where does the discussion start?
Great question. I can kind of take you back to the thought process that we were having internally in kind of putting this team together. So part of the reason I got brought over to Falkirk was my previous work with Mike and water treatment, and the kind of origin story of Falkirk started with kind of permitting and approvals and managing environmental assessments and permit applications like Mines Act, Environmental Management Act permit applications here in BC. And then as the companies kind of got more experience and evolved and grown, we've added these kind of, practice areas, I think is how we refer to them, to address specific gaps and specific stumbling points that we see consistently with every single permit application. So, the first one was Indigenous engagement. So Christy Smith's our VP of Indigenous engagement, and she has an incredible group that does really good work. So, making sure that we were really tight on Indigenous engagement was important. And then the second one was just water, and I mean, like Mike and Jen and Max and the rest of the team, they don't have scientific backgrounds specific to, water and water resources and water management, water stewardship, but they kept seeing this issue coming up again and again. And just the level of scrutiny and, the desired level of investigation and the detail required on the water piece, they said, okay, like we got to solve this problem, get out ahead of it. So the water team is kind of how it was on the drawing board. At first, it was myself and one of my colleagues, Eric Skirius. He's a very high level water modeler. So he's kind of the brains behind the operation, putting all these predictive models together. And it was kind of him and I going, okay, we need to build a water team. What do we do here? And then, the next real piece of the puzzle was adding Apurva Galamudi, who's our water stewardship practice lead. And we were thinking, okay, we need to build this water team. We need to not just do the bare minimum of addressing, like checking the boxes on permit applications, but, how do we approach this from a holistic point of view? And how do we kind of meaningfully address the issue of water when it comes to, mines and mine sites in the mining industry moving forward? So, the word stewardship was chosen very carefully because traditionally, I think in the past, you hear, and you still hear it a lot, water management. So like, if you think of the word management and the definition of management, it's like, you're controlling something. Yeah. You're being very kind of specific and prescriptive with it. Whereas the word stewardship is more about, taking care of something and caring for a resource. So, we were very intentional in calling it the water stewardship practice area, because, that kind of perspective and that motive is built in of, water is an incredibly valuable resource. And, in the past on a mine site, water is just something that happens to be there. And like, yeah, you need some of it to run your process and whatever, but the rest is just kind of, it's not valuable. It's waste. It's a problem to be kind of disposed of, whereas Now I think everyone's perspective is shifting to water, and like water is an incredibly valuable commodity, and you need to be very, considerate about what you're doing with water on your mine site, because typically, a lot of these mine sites they're high up in the mountains, they're near headwaters, they're kind of like where the water starts in its journey, so what we do to the water at the mine site has an impact on all the water users downstream. And that could be, tens, hundreds of Indigenous communities, First Nations, residential areas. People are using this water to, drink themselves, water their fields, feed their livestock, all these things. So, having a perspective of stewardship and caring for the water and making sure that it's being taken care of properly, I think is a really important thing to think about.
Nadia, I'm curious, coming into now this industry, had you already had experience with the stakeholder conversation, which is really heightened in mining?
Yeah, I had to a degree. Definitely, one thing I've noticed coming into the mining industry is it becomes that much more important. And especially like Ryan said, we're starting at headwaters, and the impacts of that filter all the way through down to many, many different stakeholders, and their use of water and the value they place on water is very diverse. So I think just building off of what Ryan said about, management versus stewardship, management feels like it has very clear-cut boundaries and a start and an end, where stewardship, I think, leaves a lot more space to bring in those diverse perspectives, to really listen to the stakeholders that are going to be involved in these projects.